The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 11 years after the sauna. I was at my desk cross-referencing spreadsheets, and when his name appeared on my phone, I didn't feel the jolt I might have expected. I felt a kind of distant curiosity, like spotting an old tool in a museum. I let it ring to voicemail. His voice was the same, slightly worn at the edges, but the same. He needed my signature. Something about an inheritance complication, a family property, a guarantee only a direct relative could provide. He sounded rushed, entitled, as if the intervening years had been a minor inconvenience. He ended with, "Call me back. It's important." I didn't call back. I went back to my spreadsheets. The sauna was a Christmas tradition. My stepdad built it himself. A low wooden structure behind the house that smelled of wet cedar and smoke. That night I was 15. I'd left a tool outside, something stupid, and he'd had to go back out into the snow to get it. When he came back in, red-faced from the heat and whatever else, he didn't say a word, he just swung. It wasn't the pain. It was the heat on my face afterward, how it seemed to make the sting bloom wider. It was the laughter from the house, muffled through the thin walls, my younger half-brothers, my mother's tired chuckle. They were watching something funny on TV. They hadn't heard a thing. And in that precise moment, sitting on the wooden bench with my cheek throbbing, I understood something with absolute clarity. I was not part of their story. I finished the sauna session. I dressed. I walked back into the house, past the living room where they were all gathered, and up to my room. No one looked up. No one called out. I packed a small bag quietly, and I left through the back door. I walked 3 miles to a friend's house in the snow. They didn't notice I was gone until the next morning. Over the next few years, I made it easy for them. I stopped coming to Christmas. I stopped answering calls that weren't from my mother, and even hers became shorter. I heard through relatives that my stepdad would sometimes make a comment about me being too good for them now, delivered with a smirk. I was the cautionary tale, the ungrateful one. The power he had over me was the power of narrative, and in his version, I was the villain who abandoned the family. I didn't correct it. I just stopped listening. I built a life on the opposite coast. I became good at things that required quiet precision, first coding, then systems analysis. I learned that if you control the data, you control the outcome. I dated, ended things cleanly, made a few friends who knew me only as the calm guy who never talked about his past. The fortress was complete. I didn't think of the sauna. I didn't think of him. I had erased myself from his story so completely that I'd almost erased him from mine. He called 4 more times that week. Each message grew slightly less entitled, slightly more confused. On the 5th day, he sent a text, "Can we just talk, please?" I agreed to meet. I chose the place, a quiet wine bar near my office, a place with low lighting and high, backed leather chairs, a place where I knew the staff, where the sommelier would greet me by name, a place where I held all the cards without having to say so. He was early. I watched him from the door for a moment. He looked smaller. The bulk had softened, the confidence had thinned into a kind of nervous fidgeting with his car keys. When I sat down, he looked up, and for a second, I saw him searching my face for the 15-year-old boy. He didn't find him. "Thanks for coming," he said. The words seemed to cost him something. I nodded. I didn't speak. He launched into it. The property, the legal snag, the signature. He needed my birth certificate, proof of relation, a notarized form. It was all very simple, he said. It would just take a few minutes of my time. I let him finish. I took a slow sip of the water the waiter had brought. Then I said, quietly and evenly, "No." He blinked. "What?" "I'm not signing anything." A flush crept up his neck. The old anger flickered in his eyes, the one that used to silence me. But I just looked back at him calmly, and he looked away first. "This isn't about me," he said, his voice tightening. "It's about the family." "Your mother?" "My mother?" I interrupted. "Has my number. She's never once called to ask where I went." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The script he'd prepared didn't have this scene. He tried a different angle, softer now. That night, the sauna, I was under a lot of pressure. Work, the boys. It was a mistake. A bad moment. I waited. The silence stretched. A bad moment. 11 years of silence reduced to a bad moment. Did you ever even notice I was gone? I asked. The question landed exactly where I'd aimed it. Not at the slap, but at everything that followed. The empty chair at dinner, the missing presence in photographs, the years of not asking, not calling, not wondering. He looked down at his hands. The flush had drained from his face, leaving it pale and uncertain. He had no answer. There was no answer that wouldn't condemn him. I signaled the waiter for the check. I paid for both our drinks, left a generous tip, and stood up. He didn't move. He just sat there, a man who had spent years believing he was the author of a story, only to discover he was a minor character in someone else's. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I walked toward the train, my hands in my pockets. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt a strange, hollow clarity, like the silence after a long overdue confession. The bond wasn't broken because it had never really existed. It was just a thread I'd finally stopped pretending to hold. I didn't look back.